Hey guys, this is Dr. Puzio from Ethos Physical Therapy. Today we're going to be talking about tissue tolerance and the relationship between load and capacity and how it can create injury and pain. So we're going to start off by defining some of this so you understand what we're talking about and then get into how it applies to something like a tendon and how Achilles tendinopathy or rotator cuff tendinopathy can occur. So let's kind of break this down. We'll start with load. So that is the stress we put on a tissue. That can be the intensity, meaning the weight of, say, an exercise or the intensity of a movement, the frequency, how often we're doing it, and volume. So let's talk about running, right? Say, volume, we ran 5 miles, we did that frequency 3 times a week, and our pace was a 6-minute mile. Just to give you an idea of some of those. Or if you want to talk about the shoulder and maybe rotator cuff tendinopathy, we'll say intensity is a 225-pound bench, and you did that for 5 sets, and we did that multiple times a week, but you also have to think about all the other movements and exercises you do. So I think we understand load. Next, let's talk capacity. That's what can the tissue handle. So that has a lot of variables, but 3 big ones we'll kind of talk about today. Adaptation, whether it's positive or negative. So positive adaptation is, our muscle, our tendon. It gets stronger, more resilient over time with progressive overload and training. That's what we're all aiming for at the end of the day. But we can also have negative adaptation when an injury occurs and there's an inflammatory process and it starts to degrade. So it can go in both directions. Recovery, sleep specifically, is very important. If you're sleeping 4 hours a night, compared to 8 hours a night, that tissue isn't repairing and putting itself back together and getting stronger the way it should after you work out or just daily stressors. Nutrition, along the same lines, right? If we have a low protein intake, we have a crappy diet filled with sugars and processed foods and inflammatory issues, that's going to be a point of concern too. So let's, zoom back out, kind of take a look at this. When load is greater than capacity, that's where we get pain. That's when a tendinopathy occurs or a chronic muscle issue or joint issue, things along those lines, right? But let's really focus on tendons. So again, let's go back to the Achilles tendon. I'm running, 25 miles a week, some different paces, some different mileage. And at some point, that Achilles tendon, all this load exceeds what it has in terms of capacity, and we get pain. So how do we fix that? The problem is most people go straight to rest. So what does rest do? It is going to decrease your load temporarily. So instead of this, we'll come down, we're going to have load be a smaller bar. So now load is less than capacity. Okay, great. Maybe we're not in pain anymore, but you're also not training and doing the things you want to do. So did we fix the problem? No, we just kind of put a Band-Aid on it for now. The issue is when you rest for, 2 weeks, the Achilles feels better. You're like, all right, I'm going to get back out there. We increase load again without ever fixing our capacity issue. So we go back to pain. Now, let's say, we didn't even do that, but we started running less and we're kind of tolerating it. But over time, we keep the bad habits and we're not training the way we should. Our capacity can also decrease. So, that tendon isn't as strong and resilient. Your calf got a little weaker, things along those lines. Now you're back to the same stupid ratio of, okay, doing too much, I'm in pain again. So how do we fix that? How do we get to where capacity is greater than load and we're able to tolerate and do the things we want to do? We want this to go up. We can decrease this in the short term, but long term, that's our goal. So that is where the rehab process comes into play. That's where progressive overload and strengthening comes into play. Build a stronger muscle base, a more resilient tendon, get you sleeping better, prioritize your health, nutrition, get a high protein intake, make sure you're giving yourself the fuel to recover. So when all these 3 variables start to increase, this goes up. Now, finally, capacity is greater than load. That is our sweet spot. That's the end goal. That's how you get out of pain and you fix a Achilles tendinopathy, a patellar tendinopathy, golfer or tennis elbow or shoulder issue. That is how we fix it long term. So I know this was a little bit longer of a format video. If you stuck around for the whole thing, awesome. Hope you learned a little bit and you understand kind of that relationship between load, capacity, and how it can create pain, dysfunction, and all of our other injuries and issues.